Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles channel. My name is Erin and today I have a very simple knitting tutorial ready for you. So I've gotten a lot of requests lately for what people should make for their very first knitting project, or an easy project for beginners, or just something quick and easy that you can whip out for gifts this holiday season if you are running behind. So I decided to do a tutorial for this very simple twisted headband. This is just knit in your basic knit stitch or garter stitch, and the real magic comes together when you sew the ends together to make that twist. This will be a step-by-step tutorial, so if you're a beginner knitter, this is perfect for you. I'll teach you how to cast on, do the knit stitch, and finish off your project. It's also small enough that you won't get frustrated as easily because it's just a little project. A lot of people tend to do scarves for their first knit project, and I, like a lot of seasoned knitters, would not recommend that because scarves are really long and take a long time. So this is a much faster, easier project, but still something that you can wear right away and have done in time for the holiday season. So without further ado, let's get started on the tutorial. All right, let's get started on our headband. So I have a 3-weight yarn here with me today. The color is going to make the camera blow out a little bit, but it is just a soft cream color 3-weight yarn. This one is from Hobie. It was in one of their Mega Ball skeins, but this is what I have left of that giant ball of yarn. And then I also have a pair of straight knitting needles. These are in a size 2, kind of hard to see with the angle. You can use circular needles or straight needles if you want. You also don't need straight needles that are as long as mine. This is just what I had on hand. If you are new to knitting, I highly recommend checking out thrift stores to get your first yarn and needles. It can be a really cheap way to find what you need because building up a knitting needle collection can get expensive. These were definitely a thrift store pair. You can kind of see that the one needle is a little bit wonky, but that's okay for what we're doing today. We're going to start with a long tail cast on. So when you're doing knitting projects, there are quite a few ways to get started, but a long tail cast on is going to be the most frequently used. And if a pattern does not specifically say what kind of cast on method to use, this is the one that you use. We're going to start by making a slip knot with a really long tail of yarn. You want it to be 2 to 3 times the length of what your actual width of your piece is going to be. I like to do slip knots a very specific way. A lot of people do them differently. It doesn't matter. I make kind of an arch shape with the yarn, grab both pieces with my other hand, put my 2 fingers into that loop that I've now made, and flip them upside down, which gives me 2 little rabbit ears, and then you simply put 1 rabbit ear inside the other, and that gives you a slip knot. We're going to put this slip knot onto our needle, and that's going to count as our first stitch. Now we're going to start our long tail cast on. So you want to have both pieces of yarn hanging down, and you want I have it backwards. You want the working yarn, so the yarn connected to your ball, to be the top strand, and you want your tail to be the bottom strand. So I am holding both strands with my pinky finger down there and inserting my thumb and index finger like this. Then you pull it up so that you're almost making a V shape or a heart shape with those 2 pieces of yarn. Here's where it gets tricky. You're going to go under the strand in front of your thumb, and then over and under the strand in front of your index finger, and then pull down. That's my second stitch. We'll do it again. So again, I'm still holding that yarn with my pinky finger down there and my ring finger a little bit, and I've inserted my thumb and my index finger. Now we pull those loops to make that V shape. You go under the thumb loop, over and under the index finger loop, and then just pull everything down so that it's snug. You don't want to pull these super, super tight. You want a little bit of ease in them so that you can insert your needle into them later. Let's keep going with our long tail cast on, under the thumb loop, over and under the index finger loop. That's 4 stitches, under, over, under, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can have any width you want for your headband. I like mine to be pretty wide, so I think I'm going to do about 30 stitches. So I'm just going to keep casting on. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. As you add more stitches, you can slide them down your needle to give yourself more space to work. 21, 22, 23, 24, and I'm actually just going to stop there because I can see that this headband is now pretty wide. Maybe I'll throw in one more stitch to make it 25. There we go. Now we're ready to start knitting. There are actually 2 generic styles of knitting. I happen to be an English style knitter, so you'll see me holding my yarn, my working yarn, with my right hand, whereas some people hold it with their left hand, or dominant versus non-dominant. I am a right-handed English style knitter. So that is what I'm going to be showing you today. There are plenty of other tutorials out there if you want to learn continental instead. So in your dominant hand, you're holding your empty needle. In your non-dominant hand, you're holding your needle with the stitches. And again, I kind of also hold my working yarn with my dominant hand. Now I'm going to insert my empty needle into the first stitch so that it kind of makes a T shape. Then I'm going to use my non-dominant thumb and index finger to pinch those 2 needles together and pick up yarn with my dominant hand and wrap it around the tip of the needle. Now you have the stitch kind of in between your 2 sections of your old stitch. So you pull it under and then you pull the stitch off of your non-dominant needle. Let's do that again. Insert your needle, wrap your yarn, push it down, and then pull the stitch off. Let's do it one more time. Insert your needle, wrap your yarn, push your stitch down, pull the old stitch off. You want to keep going like that across your row. Eventually this motion will become really fluid for you and it'll be easy to keep going and keep everything together. When I was teaching this to very, very young kids how to knit, I always taught them to poke, wrap, under, and off to remember the steps of the stitch. But I have since seen a more fun version, albeit a little bit gory, but the improved version is stab it, strangle it, scoop out its guts, throw it off a cliff. So, you know, whichever one helps you remember works for you. You're going to keep knitting those stitches until the end of the row. And the last one. All right, you have just done your first row of the knit stitch. We're then going to swap hands. So put your needle with the stitches back in your non-dominant hand and your empty needle in your dominant hand. We're just going to do the same stitches for this entire project. This motion is called the knit stitch. When you have rows of knit stitches for your continuous piece, that is called garter stitch. And as you get more advanced with knitting, you'll start to see why. But usually a lot of simple patterns are a combination of knit stitches and purl stitches, which we're not doing purl stitches today, just knit stitches. We're going to start our second row. So again, you insert your needle to make a T, wrap that yarn, pull your stitch under, pull your old stitch off. Insert, wrap, under and off, or if you prefer, stab it, strangle it, scoop out its guts, throw it off a cliff. You're going to keep doing this until the end of your row again. And again, as you get more familiar with this motion is going to become easier for you to do. I actually, if I'm knitting in plain garter stitch like this, I have gotten to a point where I can do it without looking. So I like watching movies or even reading while doing garter stitch projects because I don't need to look down at my work as often. I can kind of just do it by feel with my fingers. Keep going till the end of the row. And done with row 2. So now you have 2 complete rows of your garter stitch headband. You're going to want to keep knitting until this headband reaches around your head where you want it to sit, but slightly stretched. You don't want it pulled super, super tight because then it's going to be hard to get on your head, but you also don't want it too loose because then it's not going to sit where you want it to. I'm going to continue the rest of my garter stitch rows off camera. Feel free to rewind and re-watch the tutorial for the first or second rows as many times as you need if you want to review. It is going to be the same until we get to the very last row where I will teach you how to cast off. Alright, we're now ready to cast off our knitted piece. I made mine probably close to a foot long, maybe a little bit under that. I just wrapped it around my head until it was the length that I wanted. So now that I have finished my last row of actual knitting, we're going to do our cast off row. We're just going to do a very simple cast off today. They're just like casting on. There are a lot of different methods to cast off your knitting, but we don't need anything fancy today, so we're just going to do a basic one. So you're going to start by knitting your first stitch, and then knitting your second stitch. Then you should have 2 loops on your working needle, and you're going to pick up the first loop with your non-dominant hand needle and slide it over the second one, leaving 1 loop on your hook. Not hook, needle. We're knitting, not crocheting today. Then you knit the next stitch, and again pull the first stitch over the second one. So you're going to keep repeating this pattern until you get to the end of knitting 1 stitch and then pulling the previous stitch over the one that you just made. And this kind of interlocks all of our stitches at the end so that we don't have any of those loops anymore. Casting off is also something where it's really important to make sure you're not pulling too tight, because that means you're going to have a very tight bind off edge. Because of how we're finishing this headband, that doesn't really matter. So if it's a little tight on this project, I wouldn't worry about it too much. We're just focusing on learning today. You would probably want to do a different cast off method if you were doing something where you needed the final edge to be stretchy. So like if you were working a hat where the final edge was around your forehead, or if you were, I don't know, making a pair of socks where you were casting off at the cuff, you'd really want something a little stretchier. But this method works just fine for our headband. There's a few stitches left. My needles are so long that they keep clacking on the table, so if you hear that, that's what that sound is. Usually I don't use ones this long, but it's what I had available today. And just a couple more. Last one. Okay, when you reach the end, you should have a single stitch left on your needle. We're going to need to do some seaming for the end of this, so you want to leave a pretty long tail of yarn so that we have enough yarn to sew up the edge. So I'm just going to clip it after pulling out a little bit. Then you can make that loop a little bigger, and you're going to pull the tail through the loop and pull it tight to finish off that edge. And now you've finished the actual knitting portion of your headband. Our next step is going to be some seaming. So for this, you're going to need a yarn needle. Some people like to do this with a crochet hook. I generally prefer a yarn needle for seaming, but it's your personal preference. If you would like to do it with a crochet hook because you have one, that will certainly work. You're going to go ahead and thread the yarn on your needle. So if you wanted just a plain headband, you would just sew these two pieces together all the way down. But we're going to do a twisted closure for our headband today, so we're going to do something a little different. You've got your two ends of the headband lined up. You're going to want to shift them over so that half of your front piece covers half of your back piece, kind of like that, so that they're staggered. Then you're going to fold the back forward, so now we have 3 layers of fabric, and fold this tab backwards, so now we have 4 layers of fabric. Then you're just going to sew it so that all 4 layers are sewn together. So I'm going to start by inserting my needle, making sure to get it through all 4 layers, and then pull it through. You're just going to keep doing that down this length of the edges. This is technically called a whip stitch seam because I'm just moving the yarn kind of in circles around the edge. And this is probably the easiest sewing method again, but there are plenty of seaming stitches out there that you could choose from if this one's not working for you. I love this method for finishing headbands because it just makes them look so much fancier. It also makes it really great if you're someone who frequently wears a ponytail, because you can actually put the twisted part under your ponytail if you wear your ponytail a little bit lower, and that'll keep it from sliding around on your head. Couple stitches left. You may get to a point where you can't go through all 4 layers of fabric anymore because the ones on the inner folded edge have ended, and it's okay if that happens. You can just go through the last couple spots with however many layers you have left. I did the last couple stitches a couple times just to make sure that was really secure. Now, I probably didn't need that much string when I pulled it out before. I'm going to tie my 2 strings in a knot because the other edge was also right there. If you don't have edges that line up, that's okay. You can just tie a single knot instead of tying the 2 ends together. Now we're going to weave in our ends before we flip the headband back out. So to weave in ends, you want to use your darning needle again and pull the yarn so that it's gone through a row of stitches. Now we're just going to kind of use that whip stitch motion again to go along a row of stitches, maybe like halfway across for a project like this. Then we're going to kind of go down a row and do the same thing going in the opposite direction. This just makes sure that as your fabric piece stretches, the ends of the yarn won't poke out because it's going multiple directions. If it gets pulled, it'll just be pulled back into the second row of stitches that we did. Once you've done that, you can clip that end pretty close to your fabric, and you can see if I tug on it, it doesn't really go anywhere. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Thread our needle again, and start going through one row of stitches, going this way, then go down a row and start going back across in the opposite direction. And then just clip the ends. Now is where the magic happens. So you want to pull apart your headband and kind of flip it inside out, and that will make the decorative edge. You can kind of then stretch it a little bit so that it's back to the width you need it to be, but that is going to be our finished headband. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial here on my channel, and I'm hoping to have some more easy knit projects coming soon. Also, if you're a crocheter and you happen to make it all the way through this video, or you're wanting to learn how to crochet, don't worry, the crochet version is coming soon, so you'll be able to try that out as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this helped you out if you're a beginner. I have lots of videos on my channel, so make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified of all of my crafty content here on YouTube. And if you'd like to follow me on other forms of social media, that information will be in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone!